gonna try, but evidently it didn't.
We're ready.
It's 6 p.m. We'll call this meeting of the county board to order. This meeting's been noticed appropriately by the clerk's office. We'll rise for a moment of silent prayer and pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for braving the wonderful weather tonight. We have several items on the consent agenda. Is there anything that anybody wants to pull out to discuss? There being none, then we'll note everything as recorded. First up, we have personal appearances. We have the sheriff's department. I believe, oh, I should note, we're all here. Lois Krieger is on Zoom, and Supervisor Mary is overseas again. Sheriff Tiltice, do you have words to present? We're gonna tell the story.
I wasn't prepared to, but I certainly can.
What?
No, not for consent.
Oh, I apologize.
No, for consent.
I realized that, you speak on it. Apologies. So this stems from a tip that we received basically a couple of months ago. Well, Valentine's Day, week was Valentine's Day. The sheriff's office received an anonymous tip from, was passed on through, it came from actually out of the country, Canada. And this individual reported to Sandy Hook in the eastern part of the country. And that Sandy Hook then reported to the FBI reported to the state Department of Justice. State Department of Justice reached out to us and told us about this potential active threat that was going to occur on Valentine's Day. But this, I think, was made like the morning that we were alerted for. So our staff took it very, very seriously right from the start. And we assigned detectives to that worked through the night, worked in conjunction with the district attorney's office to secure a search warrant for a residence in the town of Madison. Well, the town of Madison came into play is the anonymous informant mistakenly gave the Sandy Hook and the FBI the incorrect Snapchat account. There was a group of individuals that were chit-chatting on Snapchat and Discord, which is another social media post or platform, and inadvertently gave the wrong suspect to law enforcement. We developed some information of who resides at the IP address of the residents in the town of Addison. Was consistent with a young female that we believe was the initial suspect. We executed a search warrant on the residence that went without incidents. And during the investigation, there was very concerning things that came up about the young lady in the town of Addison. Things that she had in her bedroom and some mementos, very concerning things. And we very quickly learned that it was not actually the suspect that was actually involved, that was making the active threats. So then our detective bureau reached out to Sandy Hook, who got a hold of the informant in Canada, and we started a live chat with the informant in Canada with the actual suspect. And that's where we obtained the pictures of the ammunition, the tactical vests, the magazines, and information that this individual had to her father's semi-automatic rifle. It was very concerning. So once we're able to determine that, we actually got the right Snapchat account then. We were able to determine that that was actually the individual that resided outside of Indianapolis, Indiana, suburb. We got the FBI involved in that, and they then executed the search warrant and found the ammunition, the magazines, the tactical vests that we had pictures of. So I don't know if we actually averted a tragedy. All things seem to indicate that it did. But all I know is that there's a small community outside of southern Indianapolis that's breathing a sigh of relief. It just goes to show that you never know what happens with any given call, and this was developed and patients.
Thank you. I wanted everybody to hear about it because your department deserves a lot of credit for all you do and pat on the back to you. We have a commendation which the clerk will read.
Whereas multiple members of the Washington County Sheriff's Office and Dispatch Center reacted promptly to information from an anonymous tipster regarding a threat of a school shooting, working together to ensure not only the safety of the Washington County community, but also that of an out-of-state community. And whereas a 19-year-old suspect from the town of Addison was placed under surveillance, a search warrant was conducted by the Sheriff's Office multi-jurisdictional SWAT team, and detectives were able to connect her to the suspect in Indiana who admitted to plotting a school shooting on Valentine's Day, possessing weapons, loaded magazines, and a tactical vest, along with numerous photos of past school shootings in her bedroom. And whereas through their thorough investigation and persistent follow-up with other agencies, they thwarted a potential school shooting in Indiana. And whereas Sheriff Martin Schulte said an absolute catastrophe was thwarted because this tipster came forward. And as I think about the gravity of this investigation and what horrific outcomes could have occurred, I cannot help but be humbled by the dedication and performance of my staff that committed to the investigation from the moment the tip came in to dispatch. And whereas their relentless investigation and actions to process evidence averted a national tragedy, ultimately saving lives. And now therefore we, Josh Schoman, Washington County Executive, and Jeffrey Schleif, County Board Chair, do hereby commend the Washington County Sheriff's Office for their astute handling of information on a viable school shooting threat and for their daily contributions to keep our great community of Washington County safe.
On behalf of your sheriff's office and the staff that did that, but I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is resolution 1, commendation of James Hader. Motion and a second. Supervisor Schwab. Second. Supervisor Kelly. Supervisor Schwab is a friend of Mr. Hader, so he's requested to read the commendation himself.
As James Hader has contributed 28 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County. And whereas James Hader has chosen to retire from his present position of corrections officer with the Sheriff's Office. Now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend James Hader for his 28 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to him heartfelt thanks for his many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to James Hayter as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
The next item is resolution 2, commendation of William Nehus. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Gallots, Supervisor Toma.
Whereas William Nehus has contributed 26 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas William Nehus has chosen to retire from his present position of deputy sheriff with the sheriff's office, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend William Nehus for his 26 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to him heartfelt thanks for his many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to William Nehus as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
Next up, resolution 3, commendation of Gary Pesto. Supervisor Shadron, Supervisor.
Right, more.
Right. We don't talk every day.
Whereas Gary Pisto has contributed 27 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas Gary Pisto has chosen to retire from his present position of laborer operator patrol person with the Highway Department, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend Gary Pisto for his 27 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to him heartfelt thanks for his many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Gary Pisto as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
And our last commendation is Robert Schmidt. Motion and second, Supervisor Bossert, Supervisor Despalik.
Whereas Robert Schmidt has contributed 23 years of loyal service to the citizens of Washington County, and whereas Robert Schmidt has chosen to retire from his present position of Emergency Management Coordinator with the Emergency Management Department, now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Supervisors pause in its deliberations to pay tribute and to commend Robert Schmidt for his 23 years of meritorious service. Be it further resolved that on behalf of all citizens of Washington County, this body does herewith extend to him heartfelt thanks for his many accomplishments and successes. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Robert Schmidt as a token of appreciation on the part of this board.
Thank you. Again, we've got over 100 years of experience going out the door, so we have worthy applicants filling those jobs. Next up, resolution 5 is an advisory resolution urging Governor Evers and the Wisconsin legislature to support the county courts. I'd like a motion and a second, please. Supervisor Schulteis, Supervisor Schwab. Any discussion?
Yep.
We'll vote electronically. This is a simple majority vote. Oh, speak Supervisor Gallows.
Thank you, Chair. Just curious, I was looking through back, I didn't see anything from the WCA on their advisory of what the impact to counties would be if that $70 million would be reallocated from other expenses. Or where do they expect the revenue to come from? I'm in favor of it. I think it's a grand idea, but there's a cost to that. So do they advise where it's coming from? I did not see that.
Well, the state has a significant budget surplus at this point, so I think they could find it in that 4-point-something billion.
Right, but that's for 1 year. I mean, for successive years, there'd have to be, continued funding. And I'm just curious of that because it's a give and take, right? So.
The plan was originally that the courts in the counties would share the cost of running the court system. And that has gone from 50-50 down to like 20% them and 80% us. So for us, it means over $1 million in the budget. So it's not for us to worry where the state's gonna get it. I think we just would like the state to hold up their end of the bargain.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue to vote electronically.
I vote aye.
Thank you.
Unanimous.
The vote is unanimous. Next, we have a group of resolutions about sharing GIS services with the various municipalities. The county attorney informed us, an executive, that we could group them all together. And I'd like to do that tonight if there's no objection. Motion by Supervisor Kelly, second by Supervisor Bossert. Is there any discussion on that? We have to vote them separately, right?
No, you can vote all one.
Well, if no one wants to pull any of them out, we'll just vote on them all at once. So, again, we'll vote electronically. This is a simple majority vote as well.
Krieger Gundrum votes aye.
Unanimous.
It passes unanimously. So that gets us to resolution 11, which is the 2024 carryover. Motion in a second, please. Supervisor Toma, Supervisor Troutner. We do this every year, so Aaron, you can explain.
Sure, yeah, this is our annual carryover process. Basically, if there are unfinished projects or other items like that, that didn't occur in 24, and we carry that money over into 25 through this action. The list of things here are very similar to the things you've seen in the past. The dollar amount is similar to the past. A large portion of these are NGH, H&H, and EMS and fire grants. That accounts for 70+% of the dollars you see here. So I'm happy to answer any specific questions, but just generally speaking, just wanted to kind of give a background.
Anyone wish to ask a question or discuss? Okay, we'll vote electronically. This is a 2/3 required vote.
aye,
Unanimous.
Passes unanimously. Our next resolution is number 12 for the capital improvement plan going forward. Motion in a second, please. Supervisor Shadron, Supervisor Schulteis. Any discussion? Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, thank you. $33 million worth of projects across the coming biennium, so I think this deserves a little bit of discussion here. I wanted to start sort of the way that the county executive started at executive committee. You know, basically to give a sort of an update on where we are at the budget, in the budget process. And so this, adopting the CIP is our first major step in our budget process. That'll get wrapped up later this fall. So again, status update, you've seen projects from the departments at the standing committees that you sit on. The executive's office and the budget team have packaged all of those together into the plan you're seeing today. Executive committee has seen it, and now here we are tonight to consider the resolution to approve the overall CIP. The years we're focused on here are generally 26 and 27, right? That's the biennium we're coming into. That's the biennium we need to fund, but it is a 6-year plan, and I'll note a couple of things that we've put on here, sort of in the out years, and keep them and put them on our collective radars for priority setting as we move forward. There's an exhibit, Exhibit A. It's immediately behind the resolution. It's just sort of a summary table of the CIP itself. But the information I'd like to draw your attention to is the very bottom section, sales tax estimates and allocation. In there, we talk about how we split the sales tax between the CIP and the operating budget. You'll see here that this CIP proposes 55.5% of the sales tax being projected to go into the operating budget. The budget we're in today, that number is 52%. So we are shifting sales tax dollars into the operating budget. That percent increase basically gets us about $660,000 of new revenue into the operating budget. And again, the county executive updated the executive committee in March. And we know there's going to be some additional discussion, potentially even another agenda item coming up here soon to talk about our budget process and how the state and other budget processes might impact ours. But just to kind of give you a flavor for what the exec shared with the executive committee, we're keeping an eye on that state budget, the possibility of them not having one in time for us to build our own budget. Schools are a big driver of the timeline for the state. You might remember back to the 400-year line item veto that sort of indicated where the state revenue limits. Basically, the school districts are usually focused on that number that's in the state budget, and they're hounding them to get the state budget done in the summer so that they can build their budgets on the school side in the fall. Well, now that that number is known, that sense of urgency is not there as much. Obviously, they still want a budget, but the sense of urgency is somewhat less. We've got a lot of things happening at the federal level that could trickle into the state budget itself as well. So there might be some timing concerns from them on that side also. So I think the shift in sales tax represents us, hedging against some of those unknowns. We know our cost to continue existing operations is about $1.5 million per year. So this sales tax shift gets us just under half of that amount. We also know that hypothetically in net new construction, would get us somewhere in that same ballpark. So at that point, we're almost there, right? So we're just kind of forward thinking and planning about what that might look like. That 1.5 million doesn't account for inflation. It doesn't account for some of our other priority items either. So as we start talking about things like permanent fire and EMS funding, for example, right? Things like that, I'm baked into that $1.4 million number. So we've got some work to do. We certainly hope the legislature and the governor can iron out a budget in a timely manner, but we do have a plan if they don't. We've also approached department heads about some fiscal planning scenarios, right? Some 5, 10, 15% cut scenarios. So again, just to kind of play out how the budget process might go and just planning for all of the potential issues. So the rest of my comments are going to be specific to the CIP, but I did want to provide that context. Are there any questions before I dive into the CIP portion?
Supervisor Gallitz?
It's kind of reserved to the end of, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Supervisor Krebs, you want to wait too? Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, there's 122 pages in the CIP document. I won't go through all of them. The format though is very similar to what you've seen historically. I'll try to touch on some of the higher points and some of the changes that you've seen since standing committee. The packet also contains sort of a summary of what those changes were from the originally requested projects to now. But again, I'll try to sort of touch on those as I go through. In a lot of cases, we updated the projects because we got new data, updated information, alternative revenue sources, things like that. One example is there was a project in prior CIPs, cast iron pipe replacement in the jail. That was set, originally proposed and approved in the last CIP to happen in 2026. We pulled that out of this CIP because it needs to happen sooner. So that's one example of something that has come off. We'll note a couple of other changes, but next week, Public Safety Committee is going to see a resolution to fund that jail pipe project, for example. So that's an example of how things change as we get new information. We've been planning this thing since January, so things have been changing. So just to quickly touch on some of the sections in the projects. The clerk of courts had originally proposed an AV project to replace some of the AV equipment in the courtrooms. After some conversations with the vendors specifically about the support for that equipment, the sense of urgency for replacing it lessened somewhat, so we were able to push that project out a little ways in the CIP. So the timing really just changed on that one. The Community Development Department presented a project originally in the CIP for some ongoing annual funding for the Brownfield Redevelopment Program. That project as well was removed rather than injecting funding on an annual basis. The plan is instead to fund that program as we're able. That's another one where starting already next week, the committee will see a presentation, for adding $400,000 to that fund, for example. So that's another example of something that came out of the CIP, but given the sense of urgency, we're trying to fund it sooner or more quickly. Facilities, as you can imagine, there's a lot. The majority of our projects are in facilities. There's the Fair Park Modernization Project is shown in here, both the project and the debt, the funding for the debt service on that project. The facilities area is also showing a replacement of the membrane for the roof. There was a question in that executive, so to clarify, that's not the metal section, that's the rubber section of the roof. at that property. Outside the fair park, we've got windows and chillers and boilers and parking lots and all kinds of stuff in there. The major project in this building, in the master plan, is not currently in the CIP. The reason why it's not in there is because it's funded already. And the scope of that project is changing in real time. We've got committees dedicated to scoping and shaping this project itself, and so to put it into a plan where once the ink dries, it's already changed. We decided against that. And also you get enough updates on that project specifically that I don't know that including it in here would do a whole lot of good. The other thing you'll notice, is that there's $2.8 million in projects shown under the PAC. Those were all put in 2028 of the plan. And really the reason for that is as we're talking about all of the county's buildings, as that conversation is happening, we really wanted to show that there are existing needs at the PAC, right? And so as we're talking about and making decisions about the future of that building, those are the types of things that I think are important to know for the decision makers. And really the last facilities project I wanted to mention was there's a renovation project showing up in the jail. That it's currently showing in 2030 of the plan. So again, that's one of those where we put it out there because it's been identified as a need. We've got time to talk about and shape that project, but really the purpose for that is the basically jail trends and the data behind the jail kind of suggests the need to transition from the current arrangement, which is more of a dorm type setting, to more individual cells, right? And so this project is shown in 2030 to do just that. It's being shown as debt funded currently. But again, it's new. The scope to concept is all fairly new, but it's been put here to put it on our radar and to keep it on our radar as we look forward. The golf course, similar to years past, this project shown here to fund the projects and equipment in the golf course is 2050 plan. No sales tax in this area of the plan. It's mostly golf course fund balance. Or the proceeds, they earn, it's more like a business, right? The earnings of the business pay for the projects at the golf course. The clubhouse improvement project is in here. We're showing a funding mix of endowment contributions, golf enterprise fund cash, and there's some debt currently being shown in that improvement project. Those are really the main funding sources. The scope of that project is being fine-tuned a little bit, but the concept and the funding plan are included here for consideration. The Human Services Department, there was one project from HST to upgrade their electronic health record. Supervisor Bosker had a good suggestion at standing committee to consider funding that with opioid settlement proceeds, and that's actually what is being proposed here in the CIP. For the highway department, that's another continuation of an ongoing practice where the CIP funds the Highway Network Sustainability Plan, or the 2050 plan, soon to be 2060 plan. Again, mostly funded with sales tax. There's some state revenue sources in there as well as those come in. And really the CIP shows the projects that are being planned for the near term. But practically how it works is a set amount of sales tax goes into the CRAB fund every year, the County Road and Bridge Fund. Some years, and then they do the projects. Some years they spend more sales tax than comes in, some years they spend less, but the goal is for that fund to balance out in the end. So that's a continuation, the CIP is a continuation of that practice. Along similar lines, IT, this just continues a regular replacement cycle for IT. The sales tax in the CIP funds the depreciation on those projects in their operating budget. So again, just to kind of smooth out that plan, so they're not major spikes, as more projects come on. Parks Department, similar to golf, this funds all of the projects and equipment in their 2050 plan. No sales tax in this section either. One thing to call out here, is the Glacier Hills Lakefront Development Project. So again, scope is being discussed, but the mix of funding is included here, which is endowment contributions, grants, and Parks and Request Fund cash. In the sheriff section, the CIP shows the basically funding for the debt service on the new radio system. But then it also continues the funding for the squads. And what's kind of new this time around is some annual funding, basically saving up for the eventual purchase of some larger equipment type items, an armored rescue vehicle, SWAT truck, mobile command post, things like that. And then the indoor shooting range remodel is a project that's been on our radar for quite a long time. It's been delayed a couple of times in different CIPs. In this version, it's set to be funded in the coming biennium. So we're looking forward to finally completing that project as well. And then the last section to touch on is transit. Minimal impact to the CIP from transit. Transit shows up for the first time here in the CIP, but typically they purchase 4 vehicles a year. And those vehicles certainly meet our capitalization threshold, so it makes sense to include them here in the plan. But most of that funding comes from the federal grants that department receives. We are showing some county match in 2027 of about $13,000, but certainly worth pointing out. So happy to answer any other questions. Again, the approval for this comes in the form of a resolution. You're approving the plan. We will fund the plan in the 26-27 operating budget, but this is the approval of the plan.
Supervisor Gallitz?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Dahl, a few questions in order. I know you mentioned about sales tax and you also mentioned about the prioritization. I did notice a more macro level prioritization, low, medium, high, but in the event that sales tax collection decrease as we're entering in an uncertain economic market here with manufacturers and the consumer consumption is going to go down if inflation, et cetera, goes. So how do we prioritize or further rank those CAP projects if funding decreases?
I think that's part of the beauty of us approving this plan months in advance of approving the funding for the plan, is so that we do get that opportunity to see where the revenues are going to fall and facilitate a discussion about what has to go in the event that they do. So I believe the answer to your question would be a collective discussion about priorities.
So we look at the high priorities and say, hey, of these high, this is ranked 1 through 10, and we can only afford 8, so therefore the first 8 go.
Yeah, we'd have
Oversimplifying.
We'd have to get more granular than the global prioritization you referenced, but yes.
Okay, thank you. Regarding IT, again at page 94, we just approved tonight more service agreements, and I think that that's all a good thing, but with ongoing servers and switches and that, the shared services we have in the collection from the tax fund that, well, basically we're absorbing all of those future costs. The county, from a from the equipment standpoint.
From an equipment standpoint, the municipalities pay for their own equipment.
Okay.
This CIP is county needs.
County only, so we're not, processing any of their, we're not backing up anything. We talked about server backups and potentially even the cloud, and I think tertiary backup, which is another question, like why 3 backups versus 2, but that's another question. So you're saying the county's only, the servers are only for county processing, for lack of a better word, and each municipality, they're doing their own.
Correct.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So again, this is getting maybe into too much of the cheese making, but why 2 backups? You know, could we go to the cloud for backup? I mean, meaning 2 server backups. I believe we're also using the sheriff database for backup. You know, why?
Yeah, we're currently looking at that. We have several locations in the county that we back up to date, not just in this building, or this complex, but other areas and buildings that we own as well. So the cloud is one of the options that we're reviewing as well. So we can get back to you on that. I don't know the exact answer why we have those 2 particular on there listed, but we can get back to you on that. I'll lots of time between now and November to answer that for you.
Thank you. And then 2 others. One, for the brownfield assessment as RP, and I know you mentioned it's trying to address it more immediately, even in the next month or 2. But wouldn't it be prudent to continue to fund that on a regular basis, to demonstrate to the community that there are funds available in that pool versus 0 today?
Based on some of the comments we got,
And by community, I mean the development community, those that want to consider developing those properties and looking for some of those grants.
sure, I think, based on some of the feedback we got in the development process, I think there may be a difference of opinion about whether we should fund it on an ongoing basis or not. At this point, the plan is to give it that, so the $400 funding injection is what's going to be proposed, next week. And, the last time around, $600,000 was injected in the fund, so, at this point, the plan is to give it those boosts when we're able, rather than to tie up ongoing dollars in the program.
And that likely will come from our fund balance, which we saw on the consent agenda.
Yes, a fund balance, yeah.
Got it. And last item, and this is really getting into the cheese making, but what under facilities and the UWM Washington County facility. I'm struggling with this. It's only 75 or 100K, but why parking lot, you know, maintenance when we eliminated it back in January of last year, 100,000 for Tuck Point. Wouldn't Tuck Point be more critical to prevent water infiltration than striping or sealing a parking lot? So there, that's my piece.
Supervisor Krebs.
Mr. Chairman, I too like cheese making, although I've never made cheese. I also have concerns about basically any money that we're allocating at this point for VW and WC. I see boiler replacement, window replacements, and then also the parking lot. I don't know if we're bulldozing this building or if we're going to sell it, give it away, keep it. The boiler is only one, obviously, you need to keep to protect the asset itself. I think they're very immediate, but even that sounds like the functioning, those parts are limited. So I personally would like to see probably all money related to that building pulled over the CIP until a future date when you know actually what we're going to do with this building. Maybe that also increase the urgency of us to make a decision on that building versus taking one and bigger. So, at this point, changes are by. Do we make changes tonight on this since we're voting on it here, or how does this work?
You certainly could, you could also approve it tonight and make changes between now and the budget adoption as well. So we would adopt the budget with no funding, in it for this purpose as needed.
I guess for now, I won't get into choose making or changing the CIP and stuff, but I definitely want to support the funding of those projects down the road. Unless there's a decision that I'm made.
Thank you, and I'll just add a little detail. Our treasurer has been heading up the task force that's going to make that decision, and they've been charged to make it within a few months. So I think by summertime, before we do this budget, there's going to be a decision on what's happening with the campus. Supervisor Shadrick.
Thank you, Chair. And you guys both beat me to the punch. UWM window, UWM boiler, UWM parking, we have money for that, but I recall a couple years ago, we had $1.5 million to replace some electrical work that was urgent at that time. And I get it, there's a lot of moving parts here, but why would you leave that out when that's kind of just as urgent as the parking lot or tuck pointing, as Supervisor Khaled said? Just your thought process, because I know if we get rid of it, or depending on what we do, it's all gonna change anyway, right?
Yeah, the 1.8 million, which you're talking about, right, the electrical project that's on hold right now. Everything else that's in that CIP is in there, more or less just like the PAC, right, for your knowledge, going, if we go into this building, we know we have these expenses coming, so that task force, that work group understands that, if they do decide to move forward with the building, there's some expenses coming their way. We certainly will not be starting those projects in the immediate future, right? You won't be applying the funding until November of this year, so any sort of projects start after that. So a decision being made this spring and summer, we'll know that better off. So that's why those are in there, so you're all aware, and then that task force or work group is aware too, that we know these things are coming. If we go into the building, these are the dollar amounts that are potentially out there, so that you and they can make a really good informed decision. But no, we will not be spending, just like the 1.8 million you set aside, right? We haven't worked on that project yet until that task force work group lets us know they're going forward.
So that 1.8 million was left out of here, even though if we keep the building, we gotta spend it, because it's already been approved.
It's already approved, it's already sitting there.
Oh, that money's still there. I thought we moved it into the general fund,
No,
so.
it's still waiting for that project to be initiated.
Okay, then I guess I'll add to that committee that just keep in mind that's another cost on top of these other items. So, okay, thank you.
Supervisor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just speaking of making cheese, I have made cheese. So let me answer a few questions that I believe are relevant. The Brownfields Fund, I think what Mr. Dahl was alluding to, the difference of opinion is that we have a finite number of brownfields, and you're going to fund it with an infinite amount of funding if you continue to fund. So I believe, and I share the idea that you can sometimes just fund it as we go. And once we get things cleaned up, we can reassess our needs and add more funding as necessary. By having a regular funding to this, it just never ends, and we can't continue to just fund everything, without seeing some kind of endpoint. And I do believe the Brownfields does have an end, so I think that's part of it. Also, I mean, I see things, and that will be, by the way, becoming to my committee next week for the money for the Brownfields stuff. So I saw that, and we'll take a look at that. We'll go through it, my committee, and Mr. Krebs will be a part of that, so we'll get a good look at it, and we'll discuss that then. But I also noticed there was things like PAC funding, which according to our master plan, you could end up not even being in the PAC, So I think it's important to keep in mind that what we're doing here with this plan is, remember, it is a plan, just like our other plans. It is subject to change depending on the circumstances. Now, we're just trying to lay out a relative budget into the future. But of course, as you see, as the PAC in 2029, we could be making a plan to tear it down because we don't need it anymore. So this plan can change on some parts. I don't think we need to get too far into the weeds.
with this whole plan, but just kind of look at it as. So I guess that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? There being none, we'll vote on this electronically. This is also a 2/3 vote.
Krieger Gundrum votes aye.
Unanimously. Thank you very much for the good discussion. Our next item is resolution 13. Discontinue excess right of way and quit claim ownership to adjacent landowners. Motion and a second, Supervisor Conrad, Supervisor Vespala. You probably saw in the package, there's an excellent map that shows exactly what parcels we're talking about, but I'm sure Mr. Schmidt can answer any questions we have. There being none,
Frank Krebs.
oh, Supervisor Krebs. Sorry.
Thank you. In the staff report, it says that we were approached by the restaurant about the grassy area adjacent to the gravel parking lot. I was thinking, trying to get my directions here, would that be west of Cedar Creek, that parking lot? But is there a different parking lot that the restaurant uses, which would be east of Woolley? Am I just not familiar with?
Yes, in your packet, there's an aerial photo, so it would be just east of Lily. There's a hatched area, it's rectangular. The parking lot is just to the north or left of that. In the drawing, that's a parking lot. And so that's the area that the restaurant inquired about at the same time doing that. We looked at what area we didn't need, and so we approached the neighbor to the east. That's the triangular portion, and they would be willing to accept that portion. Again, there's no cost because the right was a pain, but it does go back in the tax roll. So there's an overall benefit to the county, and Thompson, and their taxing authorities as well.
Okay, that parking lot on east of the, I associated more with the houses in that area than the restaurants, so I was confused. Thank you.
This is a good question. I was wondering about that too. Anyone else wish to discuss this? Then we'll vote electronically. This is a simple majority vote.
Krieger Gundrum votes aye.
Passes unanimously. Next up is ordinance 1 for prohibited parking on County Trunk Highway W in Allenton. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Kelly, Supervisor Bailey. Any questions for Mr. Schmidt?
Yep.
We'll vote electronically. This is also a simple majority vote.
Krieger Gundrum votes aye.
It's unanimous. And finally, ordinance 2 is an ordinance to amend sections 15-3, 70-3, and 70-13 relating to powers and duties of the chairperson, powers and duties of the county executive, and duties of the county clerk. Motion and a second, please. Supervisor Hartwig. Supervisor Vespalek. Any questions or discussion? Supervisor Krebs.
Mr. Chairman, so Brad, question for you. On reading this is when in the absence of the chairperson. What about in the incapacitation of the chairperson? Are there different parts that go with that? grant these, with grant proposals, how we would expect them to be granted.
Generally statutorily and those kinds of things. So typically what would happen is the chair's has to give the vice chair. Something like that.
So this is mostly just when they are absent, literally just absent.
What's happening,
So,
right, what's happening is we're having a situation where the county executive is out of the office, for example. And we have contracts that need to be signed timely, and there's been some confusion from time to time. Can we present this contract to the chair for signature with statutory to become executive's duty and so on? So we sat down together, put our heads together to figure out what's a good way that we can have a process that's in the code that everybody can look at and understand, all the departments, all the departments and so on. So we can get contract process quickly and smoothly and just help us get it done.
is there anything in the county code as far as like with digital, like signing of contracts, stuff like that, or is it someone has to be here to put the pen to the paper, or?
No, general electronic signatures are fine, and we do get the permission from the county executive on occasion when he's gone to use his electronic signature. This is situations when he just is unavailable completely, or he's he's on vacation and he's disconnected for a few days, that kind of thing, where we just can't get that permission. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Mhm.
We'll vote electronically. This is also a simple majority vote.
Krieger Gundrum votes aye. Vote.
It passes unanimously. Our next meeting date is May 14th, 2025. Thank you all for your attention and discussion this evening. This meeting is adjourned.